that person breaks the trust and uses that as a weapon against you later
my God,
on.
This is the most Singaporean question you've ever asked. You know what I thought you were going to ask? I thought you were going to ask what happens if the other person doesn't reciprocate with the same level of vulnerability. But instead, you gave me a Singaporean twist. What if they use the information against you?
As a weapon.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome back to Wise and Shine. I'm your host, Reggie, aka Your Chief Financial Coconut.
And I'm Dawn, SG Budget Babe. Today we have Simone back on set. And being the expert in human connections, we're going to get her to share some tips, especially since she's lived abroad in so many different countries, how she goes about establishing and building these connections with people almost instantaneously. Building those 5 times 4 everywhere
The
around
Dubai
the
5,
world.
the UK 5, the Australia 5, Singapore 5.
Wherever 5, Australia 5. So we're going to deep dive into that and come up with some strategies and useful insights that you guys can use to help you, whether it's in your career or making friends with the moms and dads of your kids at the kindergarten and primary school. So let's dive straight into it. So Simone, you've lived in many different countries, and there's something just scary about stepping into the unknown, whether this is starting a new career, stepping into a new networking event, an office. How do you normally overcome that fear and go about building connections with all these people that you have met for the first time?
So I actually am a bit of an outlier because I'm not very risk averse at all. And so I'm actually the worst, probably natural human connector before doing the work that I've done. So I would actually be that person that goes into a new environment and I'm actually so nervous, but I will overtalk or I will overshare. And that repels the exact kind of connection we crave because it makes everyone really skeptical of you. If you go in and overshare before you establish trust with people, it makes them perceive that you will never hold their secrets safe because you can't hold your own. And that was something that happened to me after being in radio because I was always having this one-way conversation. So I would meet people and then have a one-way conversation with them. So I just want to say to anyone here who suffers from the opposite problem that you get tongue-tied and really anxious, you're better off being like that than being what I was like before I started doing this work and really breaking down the bones. So the first thing you want to do when you first meet people is you want to establish rapport. And rapport is where other people perceive us to be more like them than we might actually be. What we're trying to do is because as early humans, we evolved in tribes or groups. I have to be very careful about the use of the word tribes these days. It's very politically charged. It really is. So what I mean is we evolved in groups as early Homo sapiens. And in these groups, we were with people who spoke like us, looked like us, spoke the same language, and moved their bodies like us. So when we build rapport with people, it's actually them perceiving that we are from that same ancestral group. So my dad did this very well as an immigrant in Australia. He was a shopkeeper. So we had a small stationery shop, like a popular bookshop, but imagine 100 times smaller. The kind you have in the neighborhood void deck, okay? Except it was in Perth. And his customers would be all different immigrants in Australia. You know, a German man who was very tall, 6 foot tall. And my father would neutralize his Singaporean accent, not to be atas, but simply to be understood. And then he would move his gait to match the upright gait of this man. So he's, in perception, moving himself closer to that person, showing how they are alike rather than different.
So he's doing mirroring.
He's doing mirroring. You can also do matching, but you can also do this with language. So you've seen throughout the last part of this podcast, you know, I've thrown my word. I grew up with Singlish. Unlike how I appear, one of my parents isn't Caucasian. Both of my parents were Singaporean. And Singaporeans don't expect that. They think I'm half Aussie. They think I don't know these things. So I always want to bring us closer together, show how we are alike more than we are different in a polarized world. So I use my Singlish actually quite innately, but also because I understand it helps to close the gap between us by skewering that perception that I'm not one of you. We are from the same tribe or group of people. So we live in obviously a very, very polarized world. So actually any way that you can demonstrate to build rapport, to tenderize the meat at any of these social gatherings with the mums at the school playground, all of these things is by highlighting how you are alike more than you are different. So what often happens is I have a pixie crop, a woman with another pixie crop might be in the circle. I'll be like, girl, love that hair on you. And that would be our conversation starter. What we can look at is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There are basic human needs that apply to all of us: food, water, shelter, love, connection, and belonging. These are really safe topics. It's not the dangerous topics that you wouldn't want to use are, for example, when I'm in America, I'm often maybe the only or one of two Asian appearing people. But I wouldn't go up to the other Asian person like, hey, we're Asian. This is using race as a commonality is a really dangerous thing in this day and age. I just think in that market, it's quite contentious, right? But my mum said in Australia when she was there, she made best friends when we were at primary school in Australia with a lady called, she's my Auntie Pauline, and she's mixed race from Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. So similar to my mum, she's mixed looking. And so I said, Mum, how did you become friends with Auntie Pauline back in 1990? And my mum's like, I just look for the other ethnic person like this, right? And I look for the other brown person. And I was like, but Mum, my mum doesn't look brown, but we are part brown because we're Singaporean Eurasian, right? So my uncles are all brown. So
genetically Miss Singapore.
Yeah,
Right?
I am a phenotypic lie, like if you look at my actual DNA. So it can be used, but I think a safer way, just because of the climate that we're living in, is to look at those basic, innocuous, non-offensive entry-level topics. Food works really well. So if I have a Grab driver and I'll just ask the Grab driver, like, where's the best bak kut teh around here? And then he and I will go. I had the most beautiful conversation with the Grab driver recently about, I'm really hungry, and I was ordering the delivery from the Grab so that would arrive by the time. And he went with me and explained to me the hanyu pinyin if I didn't understand what like a dogan or whatever it was. Like I knew certain things, like tauge, I knew certain things, but there were certain words I didn't know. And we had this beautiful conversation. He's like, yeah, you can have that one, but be careful. It's actually quite high in sodium. We had a beautiful connecting experience where that person is brought closer to you. So when we talk about love, connection, belonging as entry-level topics, that means if you've both got kids, you're talking about kids. Kids are love and connection. I've got girlfriends who love to get together with me and talk about their husbands. That's the commonality, right? And I'm single, but my human connection skills innately tell me in this environment, talk about your bad dates, because you might not have a partner, but this is the category that we are connecting on. And this is the level of disclosure we're connecting on. So I would suggest anything that brings them closer together. And for hard to connect with individuals, highly introverted or socially awkward people, remember that connection leaves clues. So if you have a pixie cut and you can see someone with a pixie cut, use that as an entry to conversation. Or someone is wearing the same pants as you are wearing the same pants and you laugh because you know what shop you got it from.
Yes, we've all been in those positions though where we try to establish rapport, we try to look for these commonalities. But then you get to a certain point where the person just keeps giving you closed answers like, hey, how's the weather today? Did you get here okay even though it was raining fine? Like,
I feel like it's quite common for you.
And then,
because you are quite active in this.
I do
You
talk a
actually
lot,
want to
right?
talk to
And once
people.
in a while you encounter these people where they just give you like, yes, okay, it was fine. No, I don't like bak kut teh. Like, how about chicken rice? No, I don't either. And they don't volunteer any other information. There's only so much you can do to keep pushing until it starts to get a bit interrogative.
It's a lost cause.
Yes. How do you handle these situations?
I had that recently. I went into a book cafe here in Singapore and I thought it was the most beautiful space. And I wanted to host an event for people on my email list at this space. And he knew my same publisher. His father was helping at the shop and he was really nice. But I could tell that the guy who owned the store was very skeptical of me because of how I look, that I could possibly be an author, that I could possibly even write, that I would be worthy to even do it. It was very cold with me. And my cousin was with me, my local cousin, and this particular shop owner was really talking to me like I was very foreign. But I was with my local cousin, who is half Tamil, by the way. So she was buying like 100 books from him. We're genetic cousins. Like, she's telling him. And I got to a point where what I do is I always perceive things like this. It's about what's happening with the other person, and I connect with myself. And I refuse at my age now to betray myself just because someone has a judgment of me that I can feel, because I'm a trauma baby. So when one of the conditions that a lot of kids who have some trauma in childhood grow up with is called mind reading. So you learn to be in hypervigilance, to connect that perception. You can tell, you can tell when you're being judged.
Yes.
I don't think it's very difficult, right?
I think it's also what you do after you feel you're being judged, right? So I could have slipped into old patterns, which would be pandering, trying to get approval, trying to let him know, like, oh, look, this is my book on my Instagram. Look how many followers, blah, blah, blah. I got home that night and I'd followed his cafe because I really look forward to patroning and supporting local business. And he watched my Insta stories. He didn't even follow me back. And I remember thinking, you did what you did, Simone, but no, you're not going to go there and put an event there and bring people into his space and do all of these things. That's what the old you would have done. If someone doesn't want to be nice to you, or they want to be cold, or they're skeptical of you, there's something going on with them. So if someone is giving you closed answers, we never know what's going on inside another person. Look, I've made this assumption about him. I don't know. It could actually be that he met a girl that looked like me 20 years ago who dumped him at university. We don't know.
We don't know the story.
Don't know. That person saying no to you could be going through their own stuff. And so I think after like 5 closed answers, you have every right to be pleasant, but to wrap up the interaction with dignity. I don't think that that's so much, for me, human connection stuff as it is just being a human stuff.
Okay, so it's all about also recognizing the cues as to whether that person might not be the best state to establish that human connection with right now. Trying and then moving on to the next person who might be a better candidate for it.
No, and sometimes it's a tangent type of situation, you know. Like, okay, if it's just, to be fair, if it's a very low stakes conversation or low stake environment, right, then you don't care lah, just move on, doesn't matter. But a lot of times for our audience and also ourselves,
It's
right,
a high stakes environment.
it's high stakes. All these things you go for this environment, you know, you go for this networking session, you're gonna like, oh, 表演, right? I mean, your goal.
And then your boss asks you, how many name cards and relationships did you establish at that event that I paid for you to go for?
Exactly. And these are high stakes event, right? Like, you go in, you're there, you gotta get something, right? And I think I can stand by the ground that if the person don't want to interact with you, right, then maybe, okay lah, never mind lah. But sometimes you got to do some tangential type of connection. Like maybe you connect with someone else. Yeah.
Everyone who is a big fish at those events, being a speaker at all those types of events. So I get to watch what happens during the breaks and during when people are not in conference and they're in the hotel carpeted areas eating and drinking. You know, the same big fish are being swarmed, and no one's ever going in offering anything. A lot of the time, if these people are senior leaders, no one's even asking them how they are. Leadership, or being the big fish in the room. So let's take this not from the view of you who needs to go and make that lead. Let's take this from the view of the person you want to take the lead off, what it's like for them. Leadership is lonely. And when I say successful, I mean in the very old school monetary material definition of success, which I don't subscribe to at all, but we'll talk about that more later with the whole touching the pearls thing. But if we're looking at that very traditional, basic, materialistic form of what success is, those individuals who might publicly be known, they're constantly getting bombarded. They're constantly being surrounded. How can you stand out as the individual first that says, hey, how are you doing? Maybe they're swarmed and they haven't even been able to have you taken your lunch? That's a really common one in Asia, which is basically like saying, and you know this, are you okay? In a culturally sensitive way. Have you taken your lunch? They're swarmed by people. They've got one break in the breakout room. All these people are trying to get their card from them. And you're the person that actually... Once my book went global, I have to say, this is the last year of my life has been the year where people have least asked me how I am. Like, there's no how are you? There's WhatsApps from people I knew 10 years ago wanting something. People dropping into email, DM all the time. No one ever asked me, are you okay? And they know I have an ill mother and everything. So like, think about it from that point of view. How can you give first? And that's really common knowledge. You know, all the personal development gurus will say, give first, but show concern. And that's just being human. I told these two before we started recording, but I'll repeat the story. I had an online event last night, and we were late. We had a technical issue and the online event started late. And the majority of my following were very understanding and beautiful. But there was one gentleman from Germany who wrote me quite an abusive, threatening email saying, I'm going to post on LinkedIn to my 21,000 followers my experience, and I thought you were a serious person, like very personal. And he wrote 2 different email accounts. And the Asian female in me that was raised to just swallow this, like to take this, I think there's something about turning 40 this year that I was like, no. So I wrote a really nice email, of course apologized, of course told him you'll get the recordings for life. And then I said, I am very shocked to have seen your tone in both of these emails, very mean-spirited, threatening. And so I'm going to ask, are you okay? And do you need someone to talk to? Because if you do, I'm here. Because this is symptoms of loneliness. People who communicate like this, I wrote a book on this. You know, there have been times in my life where I have been like him, when I didn't have good self-connection. So I could go in with the, how dare you speak to me like that, blah, blah, blah. I did mention to him that no one in my community speaks to each other like this. But I think just tapping into, yes, I have to get leads for my boss, but what would a human do that is not in threat mode, which is passed down to us millennials from our ancestors? The threat mode, our ancestors came from the south of China. They were hustling, came to Singapore. We all inherit this. Like, let's get out of threat and let's get into abundance and giving, and watch how that changes an interaction. At the end of it, you get their card. Let me know how I can serve you. How can I ever help you?
I think that's really insightful, especially as we have evolved, I feel, over the years. The new generation, the culture that we're raised with is just take, right? Just take and take and take, and less about what can you give first. And I think you raised a really good point. People, especially the big fishers, if you're at a networking event, everyone wants their card. Everyone wants to know them. They can sense when you're approaching them with an agenda. And sometimes when I was in my 20s, I used to have this fear. When my boss sent me to all these events, I'll be like, I have to get maximum cards, otherwise my boss gonna, row at me back in the office. And I'll go there and I'll be like targeting the big fish. And I think they do sense it. But after a while, when I put aside my fear and I was like, doesn't matter if I'm young, doesn't matter if I'm junior. At the end of the day, they're all just humans. And it's just having a very random connection. Like, I was kind of bored during the morning one, or the morning one overran and now I'm a bit hungry. Have you gotten anything to eat? And that can open up sometimes a really unexpected, beautiful conversation and lead to connection.
Real. What you did was prime example of emotional disclosure. So I always talk about vulnerability, but in a corporate setting, going the full vulnerability, like having a cry and telling your deepest, darkest truth, is not appropriate. But what you've done is a form of what I call corporate vulnerability. It's being real, disclosed a bit of information. It's a little bit funny. It's a little bit risky. You don't know if that big fish is part of the event sponsorship team and booked that speaker. It's risky. It's real. And it makes them see you as a human with opinions. So I think that is just brilliant that you did that.
No, I think I'm not trying to like take your light now, but I think I do that a little bit too much. Right?
What's the depth?
So, like that whole this event, so many people, very scary.
No, I do it all the time.
No, but we were at the same event. Remember that event? I can't remember where is it, but it's somewhere in CBD.
No, you do it at all events.
Yeah, I do it at all events. That's the thing. Every time I see her at the event, she's like, whoa, yeah. I was like, okay, woohoo. So I just cannot, right? And I was like just talking to some of these other people, and then they end up, they were the sponsors. I didn't even know they were the sponsors, right? They were just talking. How's the event? Oh, okay, long. A lot of people. I'm not very good at events. How are you? That's just as far as I went, and it became a friend, and then it became a lead, right? And then eventually she was like, okay, I'm gonna give you this X amount of money. We're gonna do something, right? So I was like,
it's
okay.
Amazing. And, we are living what I call, it's the matrix, right? The matrix is the whole kowtowing, oh, this is a great event, and and like imagine that the whole room's doing that and you come in and like, man, the aircon is cold in here.
Yeah. The fish and chips are a bit stale.
Yeah, I did that a lot. Yeah, just it. I have to say, another networking tip that I learned from Asia and I bring to all my overseas clients and absolutely built my business during the pandemic is that Chinese, and my Hanyu pinyin, very bad, don't judge, it's the guanxi, right? It's the giving of the gifts. You know, that part of, okay, it's not, I'm not sending whiskey to anyone, right? But what I did was when clients booked me during the pandemic, when I was just starting my speaking career, and it was all virtual keynotes, and they were taking a chance on me because I was just starting, I mailed gifts to each of their direct homes because we were all in lockdown, right? To say thank you. And I still do that to this day. And I do that with my overseas clients and my publisher. And they all think it's just so generous. But of course, as Asians, it's normal to bring a kueh or, you know, whatever. But it's one of my favorite things. And that has actually turned into a really competitive edge for my business. With dealing with people in other markets where they don't have that, because it's just such an extra bit of joy that doesn't seem transactional.
And it's not something that they're used to, so it makes you stand out as well.
Yeah, and like, you know, I go to Bind Artisan and get like, you know, their names embossed on the books and something very personal. It's good.
Yeah. So next time you want to come in, like at Earn Media, you better bring some gifts.
I did already. I bought for Raven.
Yeah, that's right. No, I'm not saying you. Yeah, I see, not personal, just technical.
Okay, back to the discussion. We're talking about vulnerabilities, the different types of it. One question that we do tend to get is what happens when you disclose some level of vulnerability, but then that person breaks the trust and uses that as a weapon against you later on.
This is the most Singaporean question you've ever asked. You know what I thought you were going to ask? I thought you were going to ask what happens if the other person doesn't reciprocate with the same level of vulnerability. But instead, you gave me a Singaporean twist. What if they use the information against you?
As a weapon.
Oh my gosh. I had that at my last work. Now I can't go into it. But I had that happen a couple of times at my last work. And it was awful. It was heartbreaking. And I think connection is a risk. That's why we're also in a loneliness epidemic. So there's something called social penetration theory, which is, have you seen that movie Saw? How millennial can I be today? Seen the movie Saw?
The horror movie,
Yes.
right?
Okay, imagine you're stuck, handcuffed in a room with another human and you don't particularly like each other, but you're stuck there. What social penetration theory says is that those two people over time, because of our natural wiring in our DNA to connect, you will disclose something and the other person will reciprocate and you'll ping pong back and forth because we're wired to be close together. I have stories of people who were sat in cubicles next to each other when they first started working and they hated each other, but simply because of proximity and social penetration theory, they became best buddies because they were next to each other every day and were watching each other have lunch and things like that. So firstly, can I say our natural human condition is not to use secrets against people, is to actually deepen connection. So that is about that human. That human is an outlier that's using your secrets and they're going through some stuff. And one day they'll probably look back and feel really bad about that. But that's not on you. But one thing that can safeguard you is make sure before you're vulnerable that there's a level of trust established. If we are vulnerable before trust is established, it's oversharing. So if anyone ever comes up to you and they've just met you and they're super vulnerable to you, you should be a bit suspicious about that. Your body will be anyway.
Which is what you were saying earlier on, the the risk of you being in radio career oversharing, and that was the first thing you learned when you started doing
Except
that.
I would never use people's secrets against them. But look out for your body. This is where self-connection comes in. Your body giving you signals that I can't fully trust this person, or I'm a bit skeptical. Why are they downloading to me in this way when I've just met them? And what could be the repercussions of me matching? Because your body will naturally want to match their vulnerability. Your brain will want to do that. And what could be the repercussions of doing that? And that depends on the context. Is it within family? Is it at the office? What is the context?
Hey, I hope you're enjoying Wise and Shine so far. I'm your host Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and for us to continue to do this show so that you become a tad bit wiser every week, you gotta like, share, subscribe, help us beat the algorithm. But even more importantly, if you can, comment in the comment section below. Let us know your thoughts and also some questions that you would love us to answer. Yep, now back to the show. Okay, actually, I do want to kind of dig deeper on that whole, like, your body sense it, you know, like this whole vulnerability thing. Like, I don't think everyone kind of sense it, or is there like some objective standards to kind of like lean into, like a framework to know that, okay, this one got problem, you know?
So I think this is from also getting older, because certainly in my 20s, I didn't have connection with myself the way that I do. So what you learn in therapy is, what does your particular body do when you're in a fight or flight state? So anytime we perceive threat, someone who's not trustworthy, we will, sometimes it's not so obvious. They could be a bit shifty. We don't really notice the body language, or we're young and we're not good at reading body language yet, but you can detect within you. So things like your clavicles getting tighter, your tops of your shoulders moving closer to your earlobes, your stomach starting to move, pain in your lower back. For each person, the body detects a fight or flight state differently. You need to find out what happens to you when you feel under threat. And those are often the first response before our brain kicks in. So we could run away faster from that saber-toothed tiger historically. In your case, it's running away from pretentious people who touch their pearls.
Oh, yes. And I always get to interact with them because it's part of the game, right?
Yeah.
So I always go for the events and then I'm like, oh, wow, how are you? How's your day? It's like, do you really care about my day?
I took myself out of the game. Like, I'm really careful. But I've also built a business now where I don't need to be part of the game anymore, right? Which wasn't the case when I was in the media. Everyone is innocent till proven guilty. So I give everyone, even new girlfriends, like an auditioning period, and we hang out. But if small comments are made or things come up that my body says no, if it's not a full body yes, it's a no.
Yeah.
So I don't continue. So I think also one thing of getting closer to 40 is the level of stringence about who gets access to me and my energy. And you know, when I walked in, like, I have a really big energy and I'm a big giver and I'm very positive, but that is only because of the stringence.
Because you protect it.
Because I protect it. Because I used to give it to everyone. That sounds so bad. But what I mean is, I used to give my energy away far too easily. Because of my own trauma, I think.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
But just saying, I'm not judging the people with the pearls.
I think yours is also a bit different because you have a
seen people wear pearls
it's
in a
just
long
part
time.
of the game. No, these days guys wear pearls too. But anyway, right? It's just a different situation, and I've learned to manage it. Right? When I go and try to connect with people, I've learned to manage it. Right? And I know that, okay, if I'm here, if I'm cognitively, I have this state in my mind where, okay, I'm already here, right? Why quibble over this, right? Let me just do the best that I can. Since I'm already here, I've made the decision to come here.
But that's a sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah.
And you know about that, right?
Yeah. No, but it's more like, I'm, rather than saying that it's sunk cost fallacy, it's like I'm investing in this event, you know? So it's as much as my whole body says, this event is like too much for me. But if I decided I go there, lock and loaded, my mind I will block it out, right? And then I know that this is expensive. After that, I will go back and then I will heal, you know? So it's like you kind of,
You're conscious.
Yeah. And I think that's the part that is important, because it is a privilege to be able to choose whatever you want whenever you want, and that's not possible in a lot of the
I completely agree.
especially with working professionals, right? Half the time you're doing things that you don't want.
Well, you're making like, it's like running business. You're making meaning within the boundaries of your constraints. And you know what? The studies show us that people who have to get up and have purpose and make meaning within these happy luxury problems, because of that purpose, they actually are happier than those people who have unlimited money and unlimited opportunities and privilege, who are genuinely just kind of lost because they can do anything. So there's like, they don't have to do anything. The options are kind of unlimited. So it's actually a good thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I get that position, yeah.
So I want to push on one question that we had, which is, when you have established this connection, and I guess for someone, when you really understand and appreciate the art of being human, the art of mastering and, you know, enforcing, executing all of these tools and strategies to make and establish that connection.
It's quite sad that we have to establish tools and strategies.
But
it is what it is.
Yes. But then the next question comes in, which is, how often do you then keep in touch touch with the connections that you have made. And in our busy lives today, where many of us make these connections online as well, it's no longer just the 5 or the 10 or the 20. It can easily balloon to hundreds and thousands. And even for an average working professional, like the number of people and connections that you make as you go through your life, that can easily balloon up. How often do you keep in touch with all these people? How do you manage it?
I do it because I know the science. I know that loneliness is more dangerous for us than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's more dangerous for us than obesity, and it leads to cardiovascular disease. So the fight or flight response that your body goes into from being lonely damages your immunity, shortens your lifespan. So for me, it's not how, the why informs the how. So if I want to have a great standard of living that my parents have not had into their later age, that keeps me connected because I have that emotional leverage because I know what happens if I don't. So for all these people, like it's really weird for me because human connection is so important to me and always has been, that it's weird to me that people can go for years forgetting to message or reach out to people. But like my sister's kind of like that. So there are people who are like that. The how part of it, I just want to say, find any way you can. I often recommend to busy executives to put a recurring calendar invite into their calendar every month, reminding them of 2 things. Number 1, do a good deed for someone that's not in your direct family, okay, outside of your direct family. That keeps us connected because being of service makes us feel better, connecting us to the community. And second calendar reminder is to look through your most used messaging app on your phone and scroll back to people you haven't talked to in the last 6 months. Your WhatsApp will show you, and just reach out to them and just check in on them.
Yeah, I mean, I do that. Right. I do that all the time. And then when I see something that reminds me of somebody, not just text a person, hey, how are you? I saw this thing, it reminded me of you.
Yeah. And then what can actually happen if it goes from text, it can go to voice note. And then after voice note, it can go to connecting.
Yeah, but everybody scold me when I do voice note. It's like, I'm good. Your voice note. I'm a podcaster. Come on, right?
No, I actually had a girlfriend who's now no longer a girlfriend, which has told me it has explained everything why, who just would stop listening to them, and she'd be like, "Oh, babe, can you just stop sending voice notes?" Blah blah. And I just thought that was so offensive. Your time is not more valuable than my time. I'm just as busy as you. But then anyway, I found out that girl gossiped about me, so that was a red flag that I should have known. But it was before I had done the work that I'm doing now, that wasn't a true connection anyway. But I think if somebody makes any sort of attempt to reach out, have communication, and you ghost and ignore and do not reciprocate, reciprocation is what our body instinctually as humans wants to do. So if people come to me and they say they're a healer or whatever and they're into this, but they ghost and don't even reply, how in touch with you are you with your humanity? This ghosting thing is recent. This ghosting thing, I think if we tracked when it started, there's a really great correlation between that and the loneliness epidemic. When you ghost, you're telling someone you are so worthless to me that I'm not even bothering to reply to you. How awful.
Really?
Okay, I'm going to step and be like the devil's advocate here and give the mom perspective. Sometimes when I ghost people, it's not deliberate. I thought I replied. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I thought I replied, but it actually was just in my head.
Yeah.
But you eventually write to them, right?
Yes,
you eventually let them know.
Eventually.
Yes, eventually.
So that's the thing. Like I think for a lot of us, because connecting with people is getting so cheap these days, right? It's so easy that it becomes a situation where, it's okay, reply later, it's fine, right? And then some people on the other end may take it wrongly, right? Because in my view, if
I take it wrongly.
Yeah,
I think it's awful.
No, because in my view, if I write a letter and it takes maybe 15 days to reach you, and then you read a letter, and then you're like, oh, and then you write it back to me. It's a very long process. You treasure that one thing that happened. It came in a very particular and intentional form. But these days, you're just like, hey, hello, later, where you want to eat? It's so simple. It's so cheap that it's very easy to just kind of let it go. Take it for granted and just let it go. But it's not that. I think
but that's why we're lonelier than we've ever been.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. I mean, I don't dispute that point, but I just want to put out this idea that, sometimes as much as we want to give, people on the other side some space, like, let's just be a little more chill about the whole like ghosting side of things, right?
I think the
But
key thing
eventually,
though
if you
is
don't
that
come back,
it has to get communicated.
yes. But eventually, if I don't reply you, then it's quite an ass.
hello, why you ignore me?
Yeah, I think response time is different for everyone. And we're not talking about response time. We're just talking about
okay, fair.
disappearing
Fair.
forever.
I get that. I understand that.
And I think if you get busy as a mum or whoever, I mean, mums are busy, executives are busy, business owners, everyone is busy. Just mark it as unread so that you go back later. Just mark it as unread.
Or reply in a way I find that can help later on, which is, I heard you, I'll come back to you later. And then if I forget, sometimes that person will be like, hey, I'm still waiting for you. And it helps. Yeah. But this is something that I've learned over the years, because in the beginning, I would just completely forget. I thought I replied you, I'm so sorry. And then the more times that happened, I realized I can't trust myself anymore because I keep forgetting in the moment, because I read it and then my kid calls for my help. I run off and I forget to come back. Yeah. So then I'll be like, in that moment, like, hang on, I'll be with you soon.
I also think the standard for response time in Singapore is the highest of any of the different countries I work with. So at any time during the week, I wake up to emails from the UK, North America every day. So I'm dealing with different markets. And I have to say, the expectation from Singapore for how fast you have to reply is the highest of any, which is testament to how digitally connected we are. Like, people expect to hear back. And if I don't for a couple of days, I'm highly responsive, but I'm a human. Sometimes something happens with my mum or whatever. I just need a couple of days off. Just following if you got our last email, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But I think that's very work related. I don't think that people are as responsive when it comes to their personal life, probably because they're oversaturated in their work life.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And our Singaporean pace, this is why I love it. It fits me down to my DNA, but it is not for everyone. Like, our level of productivity on this island is why we are as wealthy as we are on this island.
Okay,
maybe so to wrap up, we've had lots of good tips and strategies on how to establish these human connections, managing it, recognizing when it's about the other person rather than yourself.
It's not always about you,
not always about you. Get over it. But I guess like the next and the final wrap up I would like to push on is, after knowing all of this, some of us might be a little bit more introverted. And making all these human connections does tire the person out. Yeah. What would your tips and strategies be for these people to recover, and how should they manage that energy so they protect their own at the same time?
So a few tips for introverts is, firstly, again, it's not about you. You've got to remember, when you enter in a room to connect, every single person there is more concerned about them and how they look than really, looking at you. Remember in high school what that was like? Everyone is actually quite self-conscious at these high-stakes networkers of what they're doing, rather than worried about what you're wearing. Is there toilet paper on the bottom of your shoe? Will they notice that you're socially awkward? Everyone is just as terrified. The second thing is if you're an introvert, you see I'm wearing a really bright color. Peacocking really helps. So if you wear something statement or bright, it draws other people to you to start conversations, so you don't have to expend the energy to approach or expend the energy laboring over the possibility of rejection, because that anxiety is what makes introverts, or all of us, very tired. The will I be rejected in the approach. The other thing you can do, and most of my besties are introverts, go out with a friend who is a massive extrovert, let them do all the heavy lifting at the networker, and then they will bring people into your orbit. And then from there, you can make conversation. And then for managing it, so I was saying to the two of you earlier offline that as we get older, we are wired to become more introverted. We're meant to be more promiscuous in our connection in our 20s so that we would find a mate and pair off. It's just the biology. And then we get less social as we get older, because our body goes, that period of time should be over. So I now, with the business that I have, still have to do as much socializing as I did when I was younger, but it tires me out a lot more. And so I have much deeper empathy now for introverts, having been such an extrovert myself, but now I can understand. So I do things like long hot baths with different sorts of Epsom salts to cleanse energy and things like that. I do chunks of time where I don't talk to anyone. So I hug my puppy and zone out and watch Netflix on my projector. And I don't feel bad about that at all, because I wouldn't be able to do this with you to this quality, with this amount of memory of all these facts and figures and all of that, if I wasn't doing the restorative work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. And I practice all of that.
Yeah, good.
I show her for the event, then she'll be like, hey, talk to this person.
Yeah,
I was like,
you get me to do all the work and then just bring the
Amazing.
people to you, right?
Amazing.
Yeah, because it's not as taxing for her.
Yeah,
And this is the book. So there's loads of more strategies and techniques in the book as well. So I know it's called Let's Talk About Loneliness, but it's actually about human connection and the search for connection. In fact, everything we talked about today really is what it's about.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And it looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I like it. It's very atas.
Very
and gold,
atas,
but
very
the
atas.
American version is not so atas, doesn't have gold and doesn't have flaps.
It's okay. American only
Oh.
atas.
I love the minimalist design.
They did a beautiful job.
Okay. Nice,
Yes.
nice. Check out the book. What's the title?
It's on sale at Kinokuniya in Singapore. You can also get it on the interwebs.
You can get it on Amazon. I think it's
interwebs.
On the interwebs.
Who uses the word interweb?
Boomers. Boomers.
Okay. Check
it's
it
on
out.
NLB as
Kinokuniya.
well, right?
Yeah,
It
all
is.
books that are sold
There's
here
like
are in
19
NLBs.
digital copies on the Libby app.
Yes.
Honestly, the community has been so supportive. It's been incredible.
Amazing. Okay.
I'm a lucky girl.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you for
your
I hope it was
joining
fun,
us.
right?
It was super fun.
So that's it for today. We'll see you next week. Bye. Nice.